Hello and welcome everyone, this is Calebovitsch coming to you with another episode of Deck Check. Now, if you have been watching either my streams or some of my eternal highlights on my YouTube channel, you might have noticed I'm usually trying to break a card or at least make a deck or a lot of decks based around certain cards in order to try and use like every playable or build around card in Eternal. Now, one of my favorites from the latest campaign set, Promises by Firelight, was for sure Tome of Horrors. But there was another card I was trying to build a deck around for some time now. I have partially succeeded in Expedition, but now I have shifted my focus to Throne because there are more cards available there. And that card is, drumroll please, Nightmare Prism! Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Do you want to know what kind of chicanery I brewed around this one? Well, check this deck out. Welcome, everyone. This is Primal Prism. Not Prison, but Prism. It is a mono-primal deck. But not really. As you can see right here on top, it is almost 5-color, with Primal being the main one, but I am calling it Primal Prism because of the power base here. We have 13 Primal Sigils, 4 Clan Standards, 4 Cobalt Waystones, and 4 Seals of Devotion. Yes, only Primal or only Factionless. Now, as I said in the intro, my personal goal was to build a deck around Nightmare Prism. Now, after I have tested it first out in Expedition, I have come to several conclusions. First of all, it is a difficult build around. Second of all, it is very difficult to fetch this card early on in the game, despite it costing only 1 and being factionless. It is not that easy to play on turn 1, because you need it in your opening hand, and even then, all the cards you drew in your opening hand are already have all their factions, so you cannot cast them anyway if they are not from your main color or your colors. So that was number 2. Number 3 is, okay, so we cannot fetch it really with any merchants or smugglers because it's factionless, but it works best when you have it in play and when it just powers out your whole market, like it was in the Expedition version of the deck. That one was Aurelian, which is Time Primal Shadow. Once again, you might have seen some of my highlights, and if you haven't, just check them out on my YouTube channel. On the video miniatures, you're gonna see just a huge graphic of the prism right there. So those are those videos. Anyway. So when you're getting a card from your market, you are drawing it from your market. So if you already have a Nightmare Prism in play, and you're playing one of the merchants or smugglers, you're grabbing a card from the market. It has to have at least one color aligned with the smuggler or merchant in question. But then it loses all its influence cost, and you can just cast it for the power if you have the power available for it. That led to a lot of chicanery as well. But in Throne, I wanted to just strike it out of the park, as they probably say in baseball, but I don't know a lot about baseball, so you can correct me on that. I wanted to also include a lot of... let me get back for a moment. The thing that Primal is lacking in Expedition is good removal and good card draw. It only has good finishers, especially when you're running Prism. So it is lacking a lot of the things that would make it into a good deck. But in Throne, there is actually a ton of great Primal cards. I mean, the Spellcrack deck that you might have seen on one of my previous deck checks, or just on the ladder some time ago, was basically almost a mono-primal deck. Just using fire for 4 torches, 3 Gardens of Omens main, and 1 in the market. Alright. So this deck does include, because it can include a lot of removal. It has permafrost, ice bolts, hailstorms, etc. But this deck also has good card draw. Card draw in the way of Strategize, Honor of Claws, and Second Sight. And those are the cards that filter other cards away, because many of them either put them back on top of your deck, on bottom of your deck, or in your void. Which means even if you have some uncastable cards main deck, and you happen to draw them before you have Nightmare Prism in play, you can just make sure that that you are able to play them, or just discard them, or get rid of them one way or another. So this led me to try and include several cards main deck that are initially uncastable, unless you do have that Nightmare Prism in play. And in my initial thoughts, I got to around, okay, so let's say power base is usually 25, so we have 50 cards remaining. So those uncastables, they cannot amount to more than like 10 cards. And in the end build, it turned out, yes, it is exactly 10 cards. So what does this deck do? And how does it combo or play? Well, let me explain it to you card by card. So you're starting off with, obviously, the Nightmare Prisms, and there are 4 of them to give you a higher chance of drawing them for your initial hand, because once again you need to have it in play if you're drawing some cards just to use them. The way to fetch them is with Elvish Swindlers, 3 copies of Elvish Swindlers main deck and 1 in the market. It is a 5-cost double primal 3/4 elf rogue that on summon plays a relic of your choice with cost 2 or less from your deck. So you have 3 of them main deck, and you have 4 Genev merchants to fetch the 4th copy from your market. So technically 4 prisms, 4 merchants, 3 swindlers. That gives you 11 ways of getting your Nightmare Prism. But also, aside from that, there is a ton of card draw in this deck, like 12 cards or something like that. So yeah, it is more probable than not that you're gonna get that Nightmare Prism, even if you don't have it early on. If you fetch it on turn 5, it still should be enough. It still should be enough for you. Okay, Elvish Swindler plays any relic of your choice with cost 2 or less from your deck. So if you were running only Nightmare Prisms for your 2 or less costing relics, they would be redundant. Like okay, so you're drawing the first one, you're drawing the second one, and the second one does nothing unless your opponent destroyed your first Nightmare Prism. But that doesn't happen as often, and well, you can have some redundancy. And if you have Nightmare Prism in play and you have drawn some cards, then you just don't need it anymore usually. So I wanted to go for some additional tools that you can fetch with Elvish Swindler, and fortunately there is another great addition in Primal, that is Eye of Winter. This one used to cost 3, but in the 6th of January 2020 balance patch, Direwolf Digital decreased its cost from 3 power to 2 power, allowing this card to be played in this deck. Simple as that. Otherwise, I would not be playing it. I would be playing something else, probably something much worse. So this one is a 2-cost Primal Relic that says once per turn you may pay 2 to stun a unit. This is quite good in just saving some opposing initiatives off, but it is also quite good if you are on the aggressive side and you just stun one unit, stun another unit, stun one unit, stun another unit, so you're disabling all of them from attacking. Okay, so that is that. But the other factionless or primal relics costing 1 or 2 were not the best. The next closest one would have to be Pitfall Trap, the one that deals 1 when it comes into play. And on each turn that you have played a unit, you can pay 1 to draw a card and discard a card from your hand, a looting effect of sorts. But this deck is not running many units, and only 10 of them can be played without Nightmare Prism in play, etc., etc. So it's really not viable for this unit light deck. But remember, you can include cards from other factions in here, and you can either fetch them with Elvish Swindler, Or you can, or if you have Nightmare Prism in play and you happen to draw them, then you're just playing them out for 1 or 2 power, and that's it. And the best 2 cards that I could find were Tome of Horrors. Well, you've probably seen my previous deck checks and or my Eternal Highlights videos. This is currently, I think this is my favorite card in all of Eternal Card Game, because it has 2 modes and is quite easy to play. It is very fetchable with merchants, with smugglers, with swindlers, with display of knowledge, etc., etc. This is a 2-cost Felon Relic that has 2 abilities. One is when one of your units deals damage, the enemy player discards that many cards from the top of your deck, and that mode has been used in my Millstone deck mainly. But I'm using this card also in other kinds of decks for the second mode that says once per turn you may pay 4 to draw the top card of the enemy player's deck. Now, including one of this card does not strictly mean that this deck is a mill deck, as I have said time and time again, but it can happen that we are able to mill an opponent. This is plan A, B, maybe C, something like that. The other relic outside of Mono Primal that we're playing here is plain and simple Adjudicator's Gavel. It is a 1-cost Justice Cursed relic, which means it attaches itself to the enemy player. Cards can't leave the cursed player's void. You just have to remember one thing that I have forgotten on 1 or 2 occasions. If the opponent has face Aegis, this just fizzles and dies and goes to the void. The opponent just loses face Aegis, but no Adjudicator's Gavel on them. There is a ton of recursion in a lot of decks running around the ladder. I mean, you have decks that are running either Shadow for Dark Returns or stuff like that. You have your side buffed Haunting Scream. Even Spellcrag uses a lot of Void recursion for their spells. So yeah, there is that. And if you don't need to use Adjudicator's Gavel against an opponent, you just don't get it with Swindler, or just discard it with Honor of Claws, or put it on the bottom of your deck with Strategize, and that's it. You don't need it. So this is the Swindler package. When it comes to units, there are also 3 copies of Jotun Hurler, mainly because it is 2 cards packed in 1. This is a 5-cost 3/3 giant, which is very underwhelming. I mean, there was a time when this was a 4/4, but not anymore. Well, at least it doesn't die to Vanquish. Not that anyone is playing Vanquish, because Vanquish also has been nerfed, so short story short. But there is also a Snowball that just deals 1 damage for 1, and it is quite viable against a lot of units from Hojin, Trailmaker, Initiative of the Sands, like Shenra, a lot of them, really. Okay, so yeah, these are the units. These are the main units. But I'm gonna get to the spells now and later to the rest of the uncastables. I mean, spells, maybe not spells, but removal. For removal, we have 3 copies of Permafrost, a 1-cost Primal Curse that stuns the cursed unit for as long as it is cursed. So it only doesn't work against endurance units or units that can be cursed, such as Shenra. And only 3 copies because I don't have space in this deck list to include a 4th one. Maybe if you shave off a Jotun Hurler, but I believe Hurlers are quite necessary. Furthering the removal package, we have 4 copies of Icebolt, the 2-cost Primal Fast spell that deals 7 damage to a unit, but its owner gets to play a sigil of their choice from their deck depleted, which is not a huge deal for this deck more often than not. Just usually don't use it on turn 2. There is that. Rounding out the removal package, the removal suite, are 4 copies of Hailstorm, a 3-cost primal spell that deals 3 damage to each unit, plain and simple. So it does kill your Genev Merchants and Jotun Hurlers, but doesn't touch your Elvish Swindlers anymore. We are also running a ton of card draw in this deck, in the form of 2-second sights, 2-cost Primal Fast spell, draw 2 cards, then put a card from your hand on top of your deck. 4 copies of Strategize, a 2-cost Primal Slow spell, draw 2 cards, then put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. 4 copies of Wisdom of the Elders, the good old 3-cost fast spell, draw 2 cards, and 2 copies of Honor of Claws, a 4-cost primal spell that says draw 3 cards, then discard a card. Okay, so when it comes to this card draw package, I believe 4 Wisdoms of the Elders and 4 Strategizes are a must. Initially, I had 4 copies of Honor of Claws, but then I made the split of 2 Honor of Claws and 2 Second Sights. And why is that? So, Strategize, Honor of Claws, and Second Sight can get rid of your uncastable cards if you are not able to play them if you have drawn them before having Nightmare Prism into play. Second Sight plays a very funky role in this deck because if you already have, for example, Arisen or Shinra Speaks in hand, but you cannot cast it, but in the meantime you have played your Nightmare Prism, you can draw 2 cards, you can put that uncastable card on the top of your deck. The next time you draw a card, you draw that card, it loses all its influence, so you actually can cast it. And that is why 2 copies of this are included. It is not a great combo, it is not always a necessary combo, but it is a combo nonetheless. That is why those Second Sights are in here. Strategizes put a card on the bottom of your deck. So it is best to use it early on, for example, to put an Adjudicator's Gavel or a Tome of Horrors on the bottom of your deck if you cannot cast it, if you have drawn it and it still has its influence requirement. Or even Eye of Winter, you can fetch it later on. Honor of Claws draws 3 cards, discards a card, so we can discard any card that you have that you cannot cast. So it's usually that Risen, Shinra Speaks, Tome of Horrors, or Adjudicator's Gavel if you have not played Nightmare Prism yet. Although Second Sight, Strategize, and Honor of Claws have additional small combo with Jotun Hurler. I mean, all the Fate cards such as this one or Joe of the Endless Horde, because these are 2 cards at once. So if you play Strategize, you put Jotun Hurler on the bottom of your deck, you play a second Strategize, you put Snowball on the bottom of your deck. There's also a mode when you're playing against a lot of X1 units that you can Second Sight your Jotun Hurler back on the top of your deck, and then you draw it, and then you get another Snowball. So there are some small synergies with that one, and that is why I'm keeping 3 copies of Jotun Hurler, but I think that one is actually cuttable down to 2, because that is a combo, but it is not the combo of this deck. We are also running 2 copies of Reread here, a 2-cost Primal spell that draws a spell from your Void. It gets Void Bound. And remember, this is drawing a spell, so if you have already played a Shinra Speaks or something like that, and you have it in your Void, or you just discarded it with Honor of Claws before having Nightmare Prism in play, but then played Nightmare Prism, you are drawing it, which means Nightmare Prism says when you draw a card. So if you get a card back from Reread, it also loses its influence cost. So there is also that. Now, as you can see, there is some card draw, there are some units, but not really any finishers, and there is some removal, but not the greatest removal, not the widest removal. So when I was thinking about this deck, well, I wanted to make it mono Primal, mainly because Primal has the best card draw, has Elvish Swindler, which can fetch Nightmare Prism, and you can have a very smooth power base that includes a lot of sigils, coupled Waystones, which are the best control Waystones because they give you Face Aegis. You can be running 4 Seals of Devotion, the power that has Warp, while you have no more than 1 type of influence. And you can be running 4 copies of Clan Standard that later in the game turn into Clan Tactics that deal 5 damage to an attacking enemy. And remember, this is one of your main ways of dealing with relic weapons, if the opponent happens to play such a relic weapon. Any relic weapon, honestly. Although, with Seal of Devotion, you have to remember, and I'm going to point it out right now, if you have Tome of Horrors in play, if you grab a card from your opponent's deck, if it's a power that is not just a Primal Sigil, but gives you influence other than Primal, and you have it in play, then your Seal of Devotion probably will not be warping. I mean, will not be warping if you have anything else than Primal. So there is a give and take here with playing Tome of Horrors and Seal of Devotion in the same deck. But that is the only caveat of Seal of Devotion. And honestly, having 4 warp power in this deck makes me not need to play any additional sources of power like Seek Power or Island's Favor. I mean, Strategizes also kind of work in a way of trying to get me a power because they, after you redraw, you are guaranteed to have at least 2 power in your hand, and which means you can't cast Strategize unless those 2 power are 2 Seals of Devotion. Also, Seals of Devotion have another small combo because you can put them on the top of your deck with second sight, but to do it if you have not played a power on your turn yet. So, for example, if you have a Seal of Devotion in your hand, just play the other power as long as you can. But there can be a turn that second sight draws you 2 cards, put that seal on the top of your deck, and you play that seal straight from the top of your deck. Which literally turns second sight into draw 2 cards. Okay, once again, I was thinking, okay, so what cards does Monoprimal need? Well, Monoprimal does have a lot of removal. It has those Permafrost, Ice Bolts, Hailstorms, even those Clan Tactics. But it lacks mass removal. So yeah, initially I also thought of making this deck a Huru one and just including 4 copies of Harsh Rule in here, but I thought to myself, well, first let's try it out in a more fun way, in a more monoprimal way. So I've included here 4 copies of Shenra Speaks. That is the same cost and the same probability of getting played in this deck as Harsh Rule. It is a 5-cost double Combri spell, but that double Combri doesn't matter. It also says kill all units, but also has a mode of Decimate, Silence, and kill all units instead. And this can come in quite handy against, for example, Reanimator decks, or decks with a lot of Entomb effects, or decks that grab stuff from the void. So yes, there is that mode. Someone also pointed out to me that this is not negatable with Caleb's Choice, but it is negatable with Rindra's Choice, the choice that no one is playing these days, I think. But yes, these are additional sources of mass removal that we're running here. But we're also lacking finishers. So what finisher would be good in a deck full of spells that also has the ability to stave off some aggression, to grab you some life? Oh wait, Risen, Great Bowmaster, a 6-cost double Rakano Flying Reckless 5/4 Valkyrie that says Life Steal when you have 6 or more spells in your void. In this deck you are going to have at least 6 spells in your void. That on summons deals 3 damage to an enemy, and it can even be a sight. Yes, most of the sites just die to Risen, like Guardians of Omens, etc., like Regent's Tomb. So yeah, just using 4 copies of Shenra Speaks and 4 copies of Risen. I mean, the most common comment when people saw me playing this deck on stream was, oh yeah, Shenra Speaks and Risen was exactly what Monoprimal needed, right? Right. There is an additional thought about playing these cards main deck and not in the market. This is not Blue X and this is not Blue X, which means I cannot grab them with Gen of Merchant. Now, there is also a market here in this deck, obviously, that I'm gonna tell you about. I could be running some Blue X cards main deck, but I'd rather just fetch them from the market with my Gen of Merchant. So those non-Blue X cards that I want to be playing in a Monoprimal deck, well, I just have to include them here main deck. And Tome of Horrors here because it's just so very fetchable with Elvish Swindler. Okay, so for the market, you can build it almost any way you want, but I would suggest including the 4th copy of Elvish Swindler here, so you do have access to 11 copies of Nightmare Prism. If the first merchant goes for Elvish Swindler, if Elvish Swindler goes for Nightmare Prism, then the rest of that doesn't have to be Monoprimal cards. It can be just Primal X cards that you can grab with Merchant when you already have Nightmare Prism in play that play different roles. So here we go. So the Spell Shaper, a 2-cost Blue X, because that's the only thing that matters, Blue X weapon, with Spellcraft 2 play Equivocate, so pay 4, give a unit, one of your units, preferably the Aegis unit, +1/+1, and send a unit back to a player's hand, transforming it into a random unit with the same cost. Also, when the wielder hits the enemy player, you get to draw a card. So this is the... I'm guessing you already have a Nightmare Prism in play. So this is usually the follow-up play. For example, if you're playing Nightmare Prism on turn 1 or 2. On turn 3, when you play Gen of Merchant, it usually is for the Spell Shaper. So on turn 4, you can put Spell Shaper on your Merchant. You can send a unit back to the opponent's hand, and you can start drawing cards to just sweep your opponents away with card advantage. Also, remember, if you grab this and you play that Equivocate off of Spellcraft, the Equivocate stays in your void. It still is primal and time, so it is still Elysian, but you can reread it. And if you have a Nightmare Prism in play, your your Prism just makes it castable for you at any point. Okay, next up is Display of Instinct, and this is mainly because I wanted a negate in the market, but this is a negate that also doubles as dealing damage to an enemy and triples as gaining some health, but usually not. I mean, if you play Risen, if you Display of Instinct Risen back to your hand, if you replay Risen, that is also a lot of lifesteal, so there is that. Next up, we have Garden of Omens, because I wanted to include a site in the market, and this is the 5-cost Primal X site that says your spells cost 1 less, and that is a great mode because you have a ton of spells in the deck. It also plays an enchantment and attachment removal, and then later you can grab that Meltdown from your void back with Reread if you want to get rid of more attachments. And yes, this is mainly here because it has Meltdown, and it has Ice Bolt, so it can protect itself. It can kill an enemy attachment, resurface, usually grabs us a card draw or maybe a Shenra Speaks, stuff like that. And then we just have a 4/4 flying unit that is not the greatest, but well, okay, she's there at least for us. I also wanted to have a finisher here, and I was running different cards from time to time, but I believe Zalchi is just the best. Kind of looks like Handsome Jack now that I think of it, but oh well. Maybe that was an inspiration here. It is a 7-cost Primal X 7/5 charge Overwhelm Warrior. That's on Entomb. You get to play 2 4/4 Ruin Stalkers with flying, and these Ruin Stalkers are multi-faction Firetime Primal units. Okay, there are a lot of interactions in this deck for sure. There is a lot of card draw. This is a control deck with a lot of fun and funky flavors. This is also a deck that you can build in a number of ways. You don't need to be playing Shenra Speaks, you can be playing End of the Story. But remember, if a card has Warp and you have Nightmare Prism in play, it doesn't really work because then you need that in that case Justice Influence. But it only works when you have Nightmare Prism in play and you draw it. You can play other finishers than Risen. Sure. I mean, there are a ton of cards, like there is literally a ton of cards that you can be running in here, like any card whatsoever. I would just suggest to limit that to Adjudicator's Gavel, Tome of Horrors, and 8 other things max. So that the consistency of you being able to play the cards in early turns is okay, because, well, these are late game cards anyway, so you don't need usually Nightmare Prism on turn 1 anyway. And believe me, playing a mono-primal deck when the opponent cannot really anticipate all the cards that you can play is a great feeling. I mean, come on, Shenra Speaks, a decimated Shenra Speaks main deck without any merchants off of a mono-primal deck. Who would expect that? Who would expect that unless they were watching this video, obviously. So yes, there is a ton of ways to build the main deck. There is a ton of ways to build the market. These are just my suggestions, and if you would like to see them in practice, I have 3 games for you that I have played on stream. I'm gonna put my present day commentary over those plays, but you're gonna see some chat that was going on anyway. And you can expect at least one more Eternal highlight on Monday the 20th with another playthrough of this deck. That one is going to be a longer one, so I'm including it as a separate video. But for now, let's just head out to the games. Welcome to game 1 of the playthrough with Primal Prism. And yeah, this doesn't seem like a great hand, like a great keep, but I'm gonna keep it anyway, because we can play Nightmare Prism on turn 1, so that every card we draw loses its influence requirements. Then on turn 2 it's a slow clan standard, but then we can play a second sight, put Shenra Speaks back on top of our deck, and make it lose all its influence requirements. Fortunately, we also drew an undepleted blue source, which allows us to play second sight on turn 2, not on turn 3. Our opponent is playing what looks like Elysian Night Maul, which is going to be a rather problematic matchup, I'm assuming, as they are rather fast, rather furious, and we cannot have a lot of cards in our hand, but I'm still warping a seal. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I can play another second sight during my main phase. For example, next turn, play Seal of Devotion on top of my deck and play it off of Warp, what I said in the deck explanation. Yeah, right now I'm not going to. I think I'm just gonna try and run deep in with Strategizes, then play Shinra Speaks next turn, then have some other good stuff ready and willing. I think I can put either Elvish Swindler or Seal of Devotion to the bottom of my deck. But I have chosen to put Primal Sigil on the bottom of my deck if I need to do the second sight plus Seal of Devotion combo to draw 2 cards and not put anything on top of my deck that's gonna stay there for long. The opponent is just going all in here because they do not know what we represent here, and that is Shinra Speaks, because no one is expecting a Shinra Speaks in a mono Primal deck, right? Right. Not Decimating, and the Decimating doesn't make any sense now. Fortunately, the opponent is not running any sources of negating for one, whether it was Swift Refusal from what I remember, negate a spell that is not fast. Okay, that is a Teacher of Humility and an Unraveling Fanatic, and the opponent is down to 4 cards, but they also, it is possible they will be playing Maul. So if I play a power and play Shinra Speaks, I am down to not a lot of cards in my hand, but it's still 6, and yeah. That is 12 damage off of Maul. So that is unfortunate. So right now I'm thinking about lines of play. Risen. Do I have at least 6 spells in my void? I do not think I do. So I'm opting just hoping the opponent doesn't have a non-depleted power and a maul, just trying to go in there. Next turn I can, and they did not. So I need to play some spells for Risen to gain lifesteal. Fortunately, I drew a Cobalt Waystone, which will give me Face Aegis. I'm also playing Elvish Swindler for that Eye of Winter. So that is putting it on the bottom, so I can play it outright. The opponent equivocates our Swindler, which is bad for us in this moment because it breaks our Face Aegis, and we still don't have lifesteal on Razan. Thinking of what to go for in the market. Could be something like a Display of Instinct to negate a Maul of their own. So I think after perma-freezing this one, I am going to get this Elvish Swindler out. We don't need it anymore. Get Display of Instinct as the negate of choice. And ending the turn. Temple Tactic putting their own unit back to their hand. Sure, let's continue. Now I believe I should second sight on my turn as well. Now the opponent is just playing Maul Face, but fortunately we went for that negate, so we are negating that. Down to 5 cards in hand as well. And oh, that's unfortunate, that is 2 cards. But that is also going to be helping us getting Risen up to 6 spells in Void. Also we have Tome of Horrors, which has not come into play yet, but that is the mill effect on the opponent. I mean, that mill effect is not going to come in that handy, but if we need more cards, we're not going to need more cards, but if we need more cards, that's where we're getting them. Lunar Magus, hope they don't have another Equivocate. Yes, they do have another Equivocate, which is a pain, but we need our health total to stay above what we double the number of cards we have in hand. Right now I could warp that Seal of Devotion, but I'd rather go for Cobalt Waystone and get Face Aegis here. Just checking what the opponent has in the void, not coming to any conclusions. I think it's going to be lumbering Grunge, because it's a big fat unit, and freezing the opposing unit. And I should be attacking with my 2/2. Yes, I am attacking with my 2/2. They are running... Are they running Sickles as a charge unit? I am not sure of that. Dusk Raider, one we've already seen from the Temple tactic. Glooming Wisp, sure. Honor of Claws. Okay, so Hailstorm to get rid of all their units. I mean, Gen of Merchant also dies, but whatever. Unseal. Well, sure. Doesn't matter that much right now. So what I could be going for is freezing one of their units. But first, I think I'm just gonna attack here. Then I could freeze one of their units, have a clan tactic at the ready, have a second sight at the ready. Or if the opponent doesn't do anything, I could just Wisdom of the Elders end of their turn. But once again, keeping it below... I mean, I do have Face Sieges, but they could have, like, get an 8th power, an Equivocate, and a Maul. Which is exact lethal here. Getting that Nightmare Prism is actually fortunate, because it is a 1-cost card that we can play, and it is fewer cards in hand. I could go for Power, Rizan on one of their units, and attack. Get up to 14. Oh, this is a grind. This is a slow grind. Should play that Nightmare Prism. Should keep their unit frozen. Why I did not play that Nightmare Prism, I have no idea. Another Sodi Spell Shaper. This time we have Face Sieges once again. But this time this is an upside, because we want to replay Rizan and get even higher on the power. I am playing this card just to get some stuff out of the way, but I could put the Jotun Hurler back on top of the deck as to draw another Snowball, but yeah, that's just a lot of cards, so I'm doing anything but that. I could just attack here for a lot, but first let's play Rizan, and Snowball, and Nightmare Prism, and freeze their unit and attack. To have lethal up next turn. I mean, right now if they maul us, it is just 12 damage, which is still okay. I mean, we can still survive it. And yeah. And they are playing maul for 12. But yeah, this was a very slow and grindy game. But I hope you've seen on each point that, yeah, first that Shenra Speaks was a huge benefit here for this monoprimal deck, and Risen, oh boy, that life seal off of 1 Risen, 2 Risen was just great. Now I'm just thinking of what to do here, whether to play Tome of Horrors first to get their Face Sieges off so we can mill them, because they do not have a lot of cards in their deck. And yes, that is good game number 1. Let's head on over to game number 2. 'Tis game number 2. 'Tis upon us. And 'tis not enough power. I mean, we do have 2 prisms, but yeah, no power. This is a slightly problematic hand, because we have 2 cards we cannot play right now. But hopefully we will get some more cards that we can play, that we will be able to play. We're not running any seats, so... we are not running any seats, so we can just play out all our primal sigils. And yes, drawing that prism is quite good here. Now we could draw into some second sides or something like that. I mean, it would be very beneficial for this deck. Now what the opponent is going for right now, I believe, is usually Royal Decree. But it turned out it was not, I think. I believe we're gonna see right now that the opponent is playing actually something I know about very well. Ha! It is indeed Tome of Horrors. The opponent is on Millstone, and not any version of Millstone, almost my version of Millstone. Later I spoke to Dodger 3, and they said they just took out Savageries for those island favors, but the rest is the list you might see on my YouTube channel under Millstone episode chapter 2, Socrato. And right now I'm just taking Aegis off of that thing, not getting up my face Aegis up. I'm leaving that for a more combo turn from the opponent. Like, kind of Shadow Step. Now I just need to draw into something good with Wisdom of the Elders. Sure. Don't know what's there. And yeah. The opponent is milling several cards with Kaido. Afterwards we're drawing with Wisdom of the Elders. That is no Nightfall, that is actually quite good. Bloodseeker is quite bad, because it's already big, even if not for milling, then for damage. Elvish Swindler is a blocker sometimes. Ice Bolt. I could hold Ice Bolt up, but I could also try and save the opponent off with Face Aegis. Now the problem with the opponent here is that they have a Face Aegis of their own. So if I wanted to Elvish Swindler for Adjudicator's Gavel, it would just shatter. So that is unfortunate. But that could be a misplay that I'm doing right now. Don't remember right now. But I opted to go for Strategize, put something on the bottom, probably that Seal of Devotion, because we won't be needing that much power. Went for Cobalt Waystone. So we have a free turn here. Corunded Merch. Now it is relatively fortunate that my deck list was actually not running Solitude in the market, and here I'd rather use Clan Tactic, because Clan Tactic can get rid of that Bloodseeker now, would not be able to get rid of it later when it grows once again, when the opponent has a lot of cards in their void, and it cannot get through their kind of Shadow Step if they revive it somehow. We have Eye of Winter here, and I am playing that, and I am freezing the 4-5. We are still at a decent health total here, but what I'm doing here is I need to keep Ice Bolt if they have a Haunting Scream for Kaido, because that would be a huge hit. I mean, I already have 19 cards in the void with some more here, so like down to 40-ish, which means Kaido can get through most of my deck, and then it's almost GG. So yes, gotta be rather reactive here, especially that next turn I can play my 3-4 and have Ice Bolt up and at the ready. So yeah, unfortunately the opponent is milling a ton of our stuff and stealing some of our stuff. And we're still keeping that Ice Bolt up. Shenra Speaks. Yeah, Shenra Speaks right now is better than going for that Swindler. I'm not decimating here. They already have some cards in their void they can get back, so it doesn't matter. And us being one higher on power is very beneficial here. Strategize does not have any influence which means it's the card they stole from us. You bastard. Dream Snatcher, yeah, that's a problem. So we're going for Swindler. First Swindler grabs Tome of Horrors. Still keeping power up for Ice Bolt. But what you doing, opponent? What are you doing? Yes. You thief. Now I'm thinking of using Tome of Horrors on my next turn to get the Face Aegis away from our opponent. And on the following turn, playing Elvish Swindler number 2 to grab Adjudicator's Gavel if we still have it in the deck. I don't remember at this point if I still have it in the deck or not. And the opponent's just passing their turn. Okay. Yeah, we're attacking because we're going to play a second one. Oh wait, we are proccing Face Aegis with this. I forget about that. And we still have Adjudicator's Gavel in the deck, and that deck cannot deal with a Gavel unless the opponent is playing a Burglarize in the market and gets another Shadow Merchant. So we still have Ice Bolt up and at the ready. We have Elvish Swindler, 1 for attacking, 1 for blocking. We are on the counter tome plan, counter mill plan, but our plan is probably going to be winning via damage, not winning via milling. But who knows? This game is going to last for a moment still. Or two. Genev Merchant. Now, at this point, I believe they are rather out of options in their market. Face Aegis is okay. Strategize is okay. Fantastic. Okay, this is great. I don't believe I need a Shinra Speaks anymore, but if I finally draw into a second site, I'd rather have Risen here than Shinra Speaks, because I am the attacker here and now. I'm also still keeping all the power up. I've already used up Eye of Winter. No, wait, no, I'm not doing that. I've already put Adjudicator's Gavel on them, so I'm not afraid of any fast shenanigans with Kaido. Because right now they are not able to do anything about Kaido, any OTK with Kaido. 29 cards still left in the deck. That is rather problematic, especially if they get a second tome. Now, fortunately, the tome they already have in play is one they got from their market, which means now the next merchant cannot get another one from the market, but it seems they drew one anyway. Now, this is a Risen I do respect. This Risen goes and kills their 2 undeadly, so we can attack with our 3/4. I'm even still freezing that 2/3 they have, so it doesn't attack us back. And right now it is 6 damage. Next turn I can just get rid of their blocker. If they don't remove any of my units, I can get rid of their blocker. With a lot of means that I have here. I can get their Aegis off with Eye of Winter, can Permafreeze, can Ice Bolt for the second time. And right here, when they're attacking, I'm blocking still because it gives us some health, but also it mills them for 5. I believe the opponent just wanted to get rid of our Face Aegis and do something here. Or play a Hailstorm and get rid of that unit. Fortunately, they did not have a second Hailstorm. But we are still at 2 attacks. What do I have here? What could I grab? Another second sight, but yeah, that is an option. But what? I need to get rid of their blocker. I need to attack for 6. It's another Seal of Devotion on top of the deck. Yeah, unfortunately this is the Risen I have had since the start of the game. So I'm still thinking, I'm still trying to figure out if that reread goes for second sight or not, but it probably should. Let's draw that Seal of Devotion, let's draw another card, let's put Risen back on top. Let's permafreeze this enemy. Let's steal something from the opponent. And the opponent is down to 4, and we're still milling some cards from them, so once again we are on the counter mill plan, utilizing similar strategies to that of the opponent. Face Aegis. And stealing a card? Sure, have at it. At least I know what they stole. And fortunately, yeah, this is it. This is it. It was a long and arduous journey through that millstone matchup, but yeah, grinding and finally made it. Finally made it. And once again, those Risens do make a difference, in my opinion at least. Okay, let's get on to game number 3 now. Game number 3, and this hand is rather lacking power. I mean, there is a strategize here, and there is a Permafrost, Hailstorm, and a Snowball, and we can put either Risen or Jotun Hurler to the bottom of the deck. So we have some options here. Opponent has a copy card. The Copycat has a copy card. That is a power at least. And yeah, I'm still wanting to keep Risen. I mean, Risen with the potential of grabbing a second sight is much better than the Jotun Hurler anyway. And I opted not to play my my merchant there because first I need my Elvish Swindler to go and grab Nightmare Prism so that merchant can grab something substantial. I also played a non-depleted power source for that Hailstorm plus Snowball, not a clan standard to make me for me to be able to play my Elvish Swindler. And here I'm opting to draw first because it is possible to get a Seal of Devotion to the top of my deck. No, to the top of my deck, guys. Anyway, now that I'm on more than 5 power, I'd rather my clan standard was a clan tactics, so we can get rid of their Tokas. From the opposing Tokas, the opponent's playing Yushkov the Usurper, but I don't care as much as this is not an aggressive deck, so that shouldn't matter much. And given that they have Yushkov and they will be powering up from Yushkov's ultimate ability, I'm still willing to go for my Elvish Swindler here to grab that Nightmare Prism to finally be able to play those funky cards that I have added to this deck. I'm also permaphrasing their bigger unit. And we do have a piece of card draw and a piece of get anything you want from the market. At this point I was still running Den of Ordeals in the market instead of Zalchi, but that works similar, that works as a finisher. So yeah, as I said in the introduction, there are a ton of flex slots in this deck. I mean, most of them are the same, but Den of Ordeals, yeah, I'd rather usually go for Garden of Omens anyway, or for Sodi Spellshaper, or another finisher. And that finisher is a solid finisher, I mean Zalchi. Now grabbing Permafrost here is very fortunate. At this point I think I can market Risen out. and grab probably Sodi Spell Shaper or one of my sights. Yeah, when in doubt, go for a sight. Sandstorm Titan is a bit of a problem, but we can just go for Den of Ordeals and go for Streets of Flame on this one, on this fella. Second Elvish Swindler to the bottom. Yeah, that was give or take. I mean, I could have also gone for it to the top of my deck to be able to grab a Dome of Horrors, so we could start drawing from the opposing deck, from the opponent's deck. Now that looks like just big old Praxis ramp without a lot of ramp. Ooh, Torch. Okay, I believe I need to chump block here to be able to play The End is Near. So we're not drawing any power for the next, a lot of turns. And hoping to draw into Shenra's Peaks, obviously. No, that is Razan. And yeah, that Seal of Devotion is going down. Away, away, get away, 10 power. So we're putting top 10 power from our deck into our void. And I could play Razan, I could play Wisdom of the Elders. And at this point I thought that I could either play Razan and chump block with him when the opponent attacks to gain some life. But I've also forgotten that there is a Yushkov in play and my Razan comes into play exhausted. So that is really not a plan. A plan, but still not a plan. And the opponent is saving their own unit, so we're not gaining any health. Now the opponent probably wants to get rid of our sight. Also wants to double torch Razan, but Razan would just die to their Titan. So that was, I mean, it was an okay play. At least we're not regaining 5 health, and I could draw into, I don't know, a snowball. Reread. Do we put the extra 10 power once again to the bottom, or no? No, probably just drawing some cards. I mean, right now at this point I know I'm not gonna draw any power unless I was super flooded. And yeah, we're gonna take some hits here. And I am grabbing a Hailstorm from the void because double Hailstorm in this situation works as well as a Shenra's Peaks would. No, that's the card that they had a double of earlier. So they have still Joe in hand and a Sigil in hand. And a Shenra's Peaks here. But I'm not going to play Shenra's Peaks because A, no one is expecting Shenra's Peaks from this deck. And B, they've already seen a Hailstorm. So I'd rather double Hailstorm here than play Shenra's Peaks. Also, they could have bigger things such as Heart of the Vault. Another Shenra, nice. I mean, I'm not gonna kill their 1/1 now, am I? Or am I? I mean, I could still snowball it. So the opponent doesn't ping us. I mean, they could be running stuff like Caleb's Persuader. And I don't wanna just waste an Ice Bolt on that one. Or do I? Clantastic. Well, at this point, I don't want the opponent to just start paying 7 and playing cards from the top of their deck, especially that they are dealing some damage to us anyway. That is an interesting card to put in that deck, but we do have an answer for that, and that is a Snowball. We can also play a 3/3, just as bait. And given that I played a shiny Snowball, I am playing a shiny Jotun Hurler, because the opponent could have forgotten about our previous Jotun Hurler that we have in hand. And they could play a Joe here, and we need to start getting rid of all their big stuff, because they could be also running stuff like Kairos here. So yes, I am playing Ice Bolt on it and attacking. And just going for broke here. Joe number 2 Yes, we can get rid of that one. Yes, we can. And a Nocturnal Creeper. Thank you, opponent. We're gonna draw some more. And right now, at this point, I was thinking what to do. If I double attack, I could play another Hailstorm. If they block with Joe, if they trade just one, I can still Ice Bolt it. I can still Ice Bolt Joe. But if I do, let's first play Strategize. And another Strategize. And I don't need that right here, right now. That's a very good Tome of Horrors. But yeah, I'm playing Ice Bolt now because I don't have any response windows for the opponent to play a Kairos. If the opponent plays a Kairos. And it's Joe number 3. Hello, Joseph. And right now I believe I'm attacking anyway. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a gosh darn minute. I could get rid of, I don't know, a clan tactic. Grab my Sodi Spell Shaper. Turn their Joe into something different that costs 8 and draw a card and deal 4 damage to them because right now seems we are the aggro. Oh, we've gotten through that 10 land clump. So by this point, I would have also drawn 10 power. I would be super flooded then. Predatory Carnosaur, that's interesting. That's a very interesting card. And that is when Shenra has to speak up for herself. And I could either Wisdom of the Elders or play my Tome of Horrors. The opponent does have a ton of cards in their void already, but this is not a mill plant. The opponent is down to 7 health. But I am indeed playing Tome of Horrors, getting rid of that. Milling the opponent as well. I just want to get in here. I am blocking with my 2-2, I believe. Trying to figure out if I'm gonna mill him or kill him. Valk Harvester. Sure, fortunately I have face sieges, so they cannot steal anything from us. And another Tokus. Well, I believe Shenra will have to say something about this. Sure, we're gaining 5 health. We're milling the opponent for 5 cards. First I'm playing Wisdom of the Elders. Playing that Shenra speaks. Not decimating. It is not necessary at this point. If the opponent has the big one now, we can Shenra speak once again. Or they could grab it with Aurelian Merchant now. And I mean, at this point, I could just Display of Instinct them soon, but I'm gonna go for Tome of Horrors. Maybe I can grab a 4-drop. Now the opponent surely needs to play something or block here. If they don't block here, we can just grab something dastardly. And milling 5 more cards, and that is a Heart of the Vault and a lot of big stuff here. So let's grab something. Sure, we can trade it off for Display or Garden. I mean, at this point we have all the answers. And we also have all the questions. So yeah, opponent is playing Nash. It's going to be Shenra Speaks number 3, or just Garden of Omens. Yeah, it's going to be Garden of Omens. Killing that Nash. That'd be very nasty. Attacking with both. Good night, sweet prince, indeed. Once again, this is not a mill deck, that is just Plan B. And yeah, let's draw some more cards even. I don't believe we need that. Yeah, that is it. That is it. The opponent has had enough. So yeah, those were 3 games with Throne's version of Primal Prism. I really hope you enjoyed the playthroughs and the deck explanation. And remember, if you did, click on subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything and it shows some appreciation for the content I am trying to put out on a daily basis. So yes, Calebovitsch out. See you next time.